Senate Bill 1372, a bill relating to conformity of the Commonwealth's taxation system with the Internal Revenue Code, emergency. Reported from the Committee on Finance with a substitute, and we have a floor substitute.
Mr. President, I would ask to pass it by temporarily. I know that there is a floor substitute that wants to be offered by a loquacious senator from Fairfax.
Thank the senator. Without objection, Senate Bill 1372 will go by temporarily.
Senate Bill 1413, a bill relating to oyster planting grounds, lease assignments, reported from the Committee on Finance.
Senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
I thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1494, a bill relating to Firefighters and Emergency Medical Technicians Procedural Guarantee Act, breach of procedures, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with amendments, and we have a floor substitute.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, with a recommendation that we reject the committee amendments, I move the committee amendments.
Thank the senator. With the recommendation that they be rejected, the question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The noes have it. The committee amendments are rejected. Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of the floor substitute.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that the body agree to the floor substitute. By way of explanation, this is purely technical.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor substitute is adopted. Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that we engross and advance the bill to its third and final reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third and final reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third and final reading.
Senate Bill 1523, a bill relating to Governor Secretary's Secretary of Workforce Development created. Reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with a substitute, and reported from the Committee on Finance with an amendment.
Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Does the senator first want to move the committee amendment?
Mr. President, I move that the committee, as Finance Committee amendment be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to. Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1554, a bill relating to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, civil penalties, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with amendments.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
I move the committee amendments.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are adopted. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Mr. President, I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1592, a bill directing the Director of the Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity to amend certain regulations related to micro businesses, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with amendments.
Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the amendments be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to. Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
And, Mr. President, now I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1605, a bill relating to stakeholder processes for the development of energy efficiency programs, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
I now move that SB 1605 be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1625, a bill relating to the statewide fire prevention code, definition of permissible fireworks, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with a substitute.
Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move that the committee substitute be adopted.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senator from Prince William, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third read.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1662, a bill relating to electric utilities, energy efficiency programs, reported from the Committee on Commerce and Labor with a substitute.
The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Yes, Mr. President, I move the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Mr. President, I move the Senate Bill 1662 be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1737, a bill to provide civil relief for citizens of the Commonwealth who are employees or contractors of the United States government who have been furloughed or otherwise not receiving wages or payments as a result of the partial closure of federal government. Reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with a substitute.
Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move that the committee substitute be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. Senator from Prince William, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third read.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1752, a bill relating to the Virginia Lottery, ticket discounting, civil penalties, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with amendments.
Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the amendment to be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to. Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Mr. President, I move the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1774, a bill relating to the Board for Contractors, requirements for licensure, certification of automatic fire sprinkler inspectors. Reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology, and we have floor amendments.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that we waive the reading of the floor amendments.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendments be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendments is waived. Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that the floor amendments be agreed to by way of explanation. These are purely technical.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the floor amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendments are adopted. Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I now move that we engross and advance the bill to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank you. Returning to page 30, Senate Bill 1372, reported from the Committee on Finance with a substitute, and we have a floor substitute.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask that the committee substitute be agreed to, sir.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be Senior Senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw?
Yeah, Mr. President, members of the Senate, it's not pleasant to have to get up and go against the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, but this is involving some pretty extensive, tax policy, and quite frankly, and I've got the floor substitute I have is a pure conformity bill, which is what we've normally done, and the bill offered by the Senate Majority Leader, I think, takes about almost a billion or 900 million out of the coffers after we do this tax relief. This is a policy that should be discussed by all 40 of us, and essentially not just one caucus. I'll tell you this: the last time we kind of acted this hastily on what kind of tax relief we were going to give to the voters was in the session in 1998. And it was called the car tax. And that takes, as you all know, $950 million off the top of the budget every year. And if Brandon Bell, former senator from Roanoke in 2004, hadn't capped it, it would have been over $2 billion last year. And to give you an idea, when you act a little hastily, sometimes things probably don't come out to benefit your area. They benefited our area. And this car tax relief of the $950 million, 43% of the refund, of the rebates, goes to Planning District 8. Of the 43%, half of it goes to Fairfax County. Now, everybody knows that we desperately needed car tax relief. But, a car, and to give you an example, it was based primarily on what your personal property tax was on, I think it was July 1st, 1997. Well, Fairfax County was $4.58 per hundred. And I think at the time, Pennsylvania County was under $1. And we capped it at $20,000 for personal vehicles. So if you had a car, or even if you have one today, that's valued at more than $20,000, the first $916, if you live in Fairfax County, is paid for by the state. That same car, if you own it in Pennsylvania County, brings less than $200 to that county. And that's what happens when you act a little hastily. And what the substitute does is it's a straight conformity bill. No tax give-backs to anyone. There's $1.2 billion into our Treasury. And if you want to do tax relief, we know exactly pretty much what we got, and we can discuss it as a group. So I would hope that we wouldn't act in haste and do something like this. We can still straighten this out. We can still get a consensus, but it's going to have to be something where we all work together. And that's why I ask that you reject the substitute from the Senate, and then we could get on to discussing the bill, the substitute that I've offered up. That's it.
I thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise?
Mr. President, I would respectfully ask if the gentleman, the senior senator from Fairfax, would yield for a question or two.
Will the senator rise for a question?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, my first question is that on page 2 of the floor substitute, from lines 36 through lines 54 have been stricken out. Is have they been stricken out just because those are obsolete provisions?
That's exactly right, sir.
Okay.
I would say to the senator, he's exactly right.
Okay.
These are obsolete provisions in the code.
Further question?
Mr. President, a second question, if he would be so kind. I noted on line 18 that there was an insertion of the date of December the 31st of 2018, and I also noted at the very end of the bill on page 3 on line 58 there is an emergency clause that is affixed to it. Is the purpose of that date and the emergency clause to see that the taxpayers for 2018 would receive a benefit when they file their returns?
Senator's floor.
That would be correct.
Okay. And Mr. President, my last question. In the absence of the emergency clause, the Virginia taxpayers would not receive a benefit on their 2018 tax return. Is that correct, sir?
Senator's the floor.
That's correct in both the committee substitute and the floor substitute, which is why we all need to discuss this.
Thank you, Senator. Further question?
Mr. President, speaking to the motion.
Senator's the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I would encourage you to adopt the committee substitute that is before you at this moment and not address the floor substitute. I would say, Mr. President, that there is a remarkable philosophical and financial difference between the approach that is embodied in the committee substitute when contrasted and compared with the floor substitute. And I would suggest to you, Mr. President, that as we consider the floor substitute, that there is an opportunity for 40 senators to have a discussion to determine what a majority of the senators feel ought to be the financial and philosophical approach on conformity. I would further suggest to you, Mr. President, that I do not believe that this should be characterized as a hasty decision, and the senior senator from Fairfax knows my attitude about the car tax and the author of that car tax. But having said that, this is not the first time really that there has been a debate in the Commonwealth of Virginia about whether or not we ought to spend significant revenues or we should return significant revenues to the Virginia citizens who are taxpayers. Actually, in 1986, there was a very similar discussion and debate that took place, and a number of the leading newspapers across the Commonwealth of Virginia ran some editorials, and the caption of the local editorial was, "Give it back." I suggest to you, Mr. President, that there are a number of other senators who are anxious to participate in this discussion, so I will not walk through each and every provision that is contained in it so that other senators may address it. But what I would say, Mr. President, there is a remarkable contrast in the approaches. Under the floor substitute, it recaptures about $1.2 billion in revenues. And we know clearly, based upon the governor's preemptive announcement on his approach to the budget, that he would like to spend about $2.1 billion in revenues. Those two positions, when contrasted with where the committee substitute is remarkable. Because, Mr. President, what the committee substitute is saying, rather than grow government, rather than spend $2.1 billion, that we want to provide tax relief across the Commonwealth of Virginia for citizens, whether they are low-income individuals or whether they are high-income individuals. And the committee substitute captures that exact philosophy. So what I would suggest to you, Mr. President, I'll let others run through the specifics of it, but if we are coming up on the Super Bowl on Sunday night, as I am told, and one of the things that I am mindful of is that on a football field, there is a goalpost. and the object is to kick that football on a field goal or an extra point through that goalpost. We have a goalpost that has been established in the Senate of Virginia. On the left side of that goalpost, very appropriately, is those who want to spend all of the unanticipated revenues or the revenues that have come through the federal tax changes or through growth. And I would say that goalpost is being substantiated in concrete in an inflexible way under the floor substitute. Over on the right goalpost is a much more conservative but compassionate approach that the Senate Finance Committee substitutes offers, and that is that we are going to return revenues to the citizens of Virginia who pay taxes and provide tax relief and not grow government.
I have so many football puns, and I'm not going to use any of them right now. For what purpose is the senator from Eastern Fairfax? Senator Surville rise.
Speaking to the committee substitute, I guess, right?
The substitute, correct.
The substitute,
Senator
right.
has the floor.
The substitute. So, ladies and gentlemen, for Christmas, I ordered everybody in my family a 23andMe kit because I was curious. And I sent mine in first, and I got it back. And I discovered that according to 23andMe, that I have more Neanderthal genes than 88% of their customers. So I may only be an unfrozen caveman lawyer, like the senator from Fairfax, and be pretty thick and able to figure this out, but I think we're talking about apples and oranges here. My high school government teacher told me to get a 5 on my high school government AP exam. If I wanted to write a good essay, simplicity is elegance. He said, keep it simple. And our governor said the same thing. He said, do conformity first, do policy later. I think I heard somebody on the other end of the hallway say the same thing, that they want to do conformity first and policy later. And last time I checked in football, you don't get to kick it through the uprights until you get the touchdown first. There's a 2-step process. And it seems to me we're trying to kick our extra point before we score the touchdown. So, okay, you guys are only going for a field goal. I got it. So, what I've heard from folks is their biggest priority right now, this very second, is to file a tax return. They want to see their tax return. They want to get their refund. They would like to be able to file a tax return. They would like to know how much they have to pay to plan their budget. They would like to know what their accountants want to know exactly what numbers to put in what blank and where the lines are going to be. And right now, they're looking at a 40-page tax return instead of the typical 1-page tax return because nobody knows whether we're going to conform or deconform. This is a 2-step dance. We don't put them together. And so that's what we hear from our constituents. And you all are trying to take the apple and the orange and squish them together and make them into one thing. And we can't do that. We do conformity first, then we can talk about policy later. That way the world can move on, people can file their tax returns, and then get their refunds. Businesses can plan their day, plan their year, and we'll figure out the policy later, just like we do every year. That's what we need to do this year. We're not going to get dragged into some floor debate about policy. That's not the discussion for today. The discussion for today should be about conformity. So we should vote against this.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw, rise?
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I was interested in the football analogy given by my friend over there from James City County. Looking around on the right side of that goalpost, I see some people who want us to spend a couple $1 billion rebuilding their schools. I see some other people on the right side of that goalpost that think that tuition's too high in our college campuses and want the students to be able to cast 2/3 vote before their tuition can go up. Well, there's a reason that we don't have the $2 billion to rebuild Senator Stanley's schools. And there's a reason that you're seeing these bills to cap tuition. Guess what? You can't run the universities for free. Surprise. You can't run them for free. And sooner or later, we're going to have to give these people some money. So before you talk about the people on the left giving the store away, if you're going to do that, don't come and complain to me that the colleges, because they don't have any money, have got to raise tuition. Or we don't have enough money to build rebuild all the schools for one or two of the senators. So it appears that it's not a one-sided thing. It appears that, and keep in mind, I'll plead guilty to occasionally being a hypocrite. But let me tell you, I'm not the only one in this room.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman, rise?
Mr. President, speaking to the committee amendment.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I appreciate the fact that we are going to need to talk about the floor amendment as we go along, and I appreciate the fact that the senior senator is putting it forward and that he is concerned about timing. I'll tell you all that timing does matter, so no one on any side should say timing doesn't matter. We need to get this bill through. We need to do it quickly. We need to get it to the House. It needs to go to the governor. The reason is because not only what the senator from Fairfax said, but there's about $200 million at stake. If we don't do it quickly, without conformity, we simply can't give back the checks or do the other items that most of us are interested in. Mr. President, there's a couple of things that I think are important here. One is the tax returns and the tax relief that was given from the federal government. There are a lot of people in this room, I suspect, that maybe did not support that, but there seems to be a lot of people that want to keep the fruits of that, and they want to keep it here in government. Mr. President, there are a couple of fundamental things that are at stake here. One, there's a belief within the committee substitute that we should return the refunds back to the taxpayers who gave it to us. Secondly, it is that government needs to learn to live within its means. This was truly found money. If you go back to the Senate finance reports, none of this was anticipated before the tax cuts. Mr. President, even without this, with the $976 million, there was $548 million that was available to us, another $577 that was available to us from the changes in the balances, and so there was over $1 billion that government could live with. Unfortunately, we ended up with about $463 million in misestimates on Medicaid. This is not expansion, but regular Medicaid. But the question is, in a year where over $1 billion available for us, how much is finally enough? How much can government live with? Or do they need to also take the refund that was supposed to go back to the people and spend that too? Mr. President, I'm going to tell you that this, I think, is the last chance. There are some people that say, let's pass conformity now and tax reform later. Mr. President, if we do that, I will fairly assure you that you will not get tax money going back to the people of Virginia. It's been very clear from certain areas of this chamber, from the third floor, that they are not very much in favor of a plan like this. There may be some small tax returns that were going to go back to some non-taxpayers, but I will tell you, if you're interested in taking back $1 billion back to the working people of Virginia, the only way to do that is to combine conformity with a tax policy. Mr. President, I would also point out that if we were to overlook the committee substitute and go only with the floor amendment, we would miss the opportunity to provide back to the working people of Virginia in this October over $420 million that would go back to them through a refund. The next is that we would miss the opportunity to raise the standard deduction the first time in many, many, many years to $4,500 for individuals and $9,000 for families. That's $360 million. Mr. President, also there is money, about $56 million, for everyone who owns some type of property and is going to pay in a property tax, and they're not going to get a deduction unless you vote for this version of the substitute. Mr. President, I know that there are many things within the budget that we would like to do. And the senior senator from Fairfax talks about the ability for us to reduce college tuition and other items. And talking to my seatmates, very clear, one way to help people pay for their college tuitions is to give them their own money back. Not run it through government, but instead give them their own money back and allow them the opportunity to pay that. Mr. President, I do believe that the committee substitute you have before you is literally the only pathway to have true, substantial tax relief going back to the people of Virginia. If you go forward with a floor substitute, you will miss that opportunity. We will get conformity, but we will not get substantial return back to the people. Mr. President, I thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the matter.
Senator has the floor.
The one thing I would take exception to is I don't believe this is growing government. It's funding government. We've fallen behind in a number of areas in terms of education, our waiting lists. I know they're hopefully going to be addressed this year, but our waiting lists for the disabled continues to be a problem. This isn't growing government. It's living up to our obligations and funding government. And I know there'll be compromise, and I know there'll be money going back to Virginians, but there are also essential funding that we need to do, and we need to provide clarity to the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I think that we need to first deal with conformity, and then let's get a good tax relief package for citizens, but also fund some of the essentials of government that are just so important to all of us. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in favor of the floor amendment.
The senator has the floor.
Very briefly, I would like to disagree with some of the comments that were made by people on the other side. The senator for Bedford seems to claim to know what our position is, but that's impossible because we've never been asked what we would be willing to put in the budget. Furthermore, he claimed that there was no intention to return any money to the people of Virginia. He fails to remember that the governor put a refundable earned income tax credit in his bill. I believe there's a whole lot of things that we could negotiate, and possibly quite quickly, but we can't do it if it's imposed by the other side on a bill that includes not only some conformity, but tax policy. It simply can't happen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in support of the committee substitute.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. We have, of course, been in session now for some time. It's a short session, and ordinarily in this short session, we confine ourselves to very limited applications of tax reform and things of that nature. We have in place, Mr. President, a budget that was fiscally responsible when we adopted it last year, a budget that provides in the second year already a 4% salary increase for state employees, a 3% salary increase for teachers and local supported employees, significant increases in mental health delivery system, behavioral health, as we all had that goal. And I'm not suggesting that there's not unmet need. There is unmet need. Now we have an opportunity here to address some of that unmet need, and I understand some of the concerns that might be voiced from some of my colleagues on this side of the aisle. But I also recognize that with what is going on at the federal level, there is a tremendous amount of uncertainty. We have to base our budget on solid ground. And Mr. President, I would say, as the football analogies have gone forward, I would only say that my teams are out. I'm only going to watch the commercials Sunday night. But But we do need to set the parameters, and if you want to equate that to goalposts, that's what we've got to do. It was of vital importance that we come to a manner where we could simply say, this is how much resource we have available to us in a prudent fashion, and then move forward with the budgeting process. That process has been moving forward, but there's a lot left to be done between now and Sunday evening. And we hope that we will stick to that goal, that we will deliver a budget for Virginians because they're accustomed to that. And I think more importantly, for the people that we represent, they don't want us to emulate Congress. They don't want to see us vacillate because of our political persuasions and not be able to deliver. So one way or another, we need to come to some form of agreement on what we're going to do for our constituents and do it in a timely manner. To the fundamental issue of what we have done, as I stated yesterday as we were debating this within the bosom of the committee, I feel that particularly with simplicity, we're much more in line here in the Senate with our proposal that came out of committee with the administration than we are with the House, because we first and foremost, whether you agree with setting aside roughly $900 million for tax relief to the people who are because of federal changes, overpaying to that tune and more, that we are basically working in a simple manner that will not complicate the tax filing season. The major changes we are putting off into the 2020 season. This year we are saying, other than some addressing in a small way some of the permanent federal changes as they apply to the corporations, to business interests, we're saying you file your return just as you normally would, and we are going to make an adjustment by providing a refund. That's simple. But the underlying threshold issue for me, Mr. President, is the base budget. The base budget was already growing a fair percentage amount as we established it for fiscal year 19 and 20. With the amount of money that we are still allowing from carry forwards and from growth, which is projected at roughly 3.5, 3.7%, we are still growing our budget. We're still growing our budget by over $1 billion, which we will allocate those resources across the critical areas that we need to fund these years. These are adjustments that we're making midstream because those resources are available to us. What we're not doing is rebasing our budget to a higher level based on temporary federal tax changes. So, Mr. President, I think the budget that we have an opportunity to develop with the resources that we've left on the table for allocation are appropriate, they're reasonable. Obviously, there will always be unmet need, and we'll come back again next year. Some of us will come back next year and continue to address those needs. But for now, I think it would be not prudent for us to allow our base budget to grow as significantly as the introduced budget proposed. And with this substitute that was advanced out of the committee, I think we are acting in a very responsible way. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the Senator from Alexandria? Senator Eben rise.
To speak to the committee substitute.
Senator has the floor.
I want to first off agree with the Senator from Augusta in that we do need an agreement. And I also want to note there was just a federal government shutdown, and we could be well experiencing another later on. But people in Virginia, across Virginia, didn't like the federal shutdown. They expect government to work for them, especially at the very basic levels. People deserve and want to file tax returns. They deserve and want their tax refunds. We need to conform now so they can file their returns now, get their refunds now, and let the taxpayers have their government work for them. And I would just suggest that the majority, or majority on the Finance Committee, are holding people's tax returns hostage. Let's get this done and talk about the budget in full further, but let's get people their tax returns.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the Senator from Hampton? Senator Locke rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to speak to the
Committee substitute.
Committee substitute.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I've heard quite a bit about the necessity for expediency. That is not in dispute. The necessity for expediency was here 3 weeks ago. It was here when we convened into session. but we certainly need to separate conformity from policy. Those two should not be embedded in the same conversation. And we've had some analogies to the Hamilton musical here in several floor speeches. I would like to add one more. And what we have with the committee substitute, I would like to say, is the Reynolds pamphlet. And with this Reynolds pamphlet, what we have is an effort to protect individuals. This is to protect themselves. But I'd also like to say that our concerns on this side have not been met because they haven't been heard. We have not been asked what our concerns are or what it is that we would like to see. And I would like to also mention that as a result of the Reynolds pamphlet, we have to be mindful of what Eliza Hamilton's response was. Let it burn.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak very briefly.
Senator has the floor.
I had a couple of things that I wanted to say very briefly. I just cannot believe what I just heard. Let it burn, let it burn. This is our state budget that we're talking about. This is our responsibility to the taxpayers of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And you know what? The cries of, we haven't been asked, we haven't been asked. That's the kind of prideful, hurt feelings that led to the shutdown of the government in Washington. And it's not the kind of approach that we have with each other. And it's not the kind of approach that the people of Virginia expect. They expect us to solve their problems and not to complain about their hurt feelings. You know, what we're trying to do is pass a budget, and we're trying to do it responsibly. What I was going to say is I hear the argument that, look, conform now, and we'll get back to tax relief for the taxpayers of the Commonwealth of Virginia later. You know, it reminds me of this little wooden round coin-like thing that I had when I was a kid, and it said up at the top, round, and at the bottom it said, to it. So we are being told, you know, pass conformity now, which, by the way, is a $1 billion tax increase on the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is my little wood round to it that indicates that, you know, at some point in the future, we might get around to it in terms of providing tax relief to the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Senator, for what purpose, Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds,
Mr. President, would the gentleman from the senior senator from Fairfax yield for a question?
Would the senior senator from Fairfax yield for a question?
Yes.
Mr. President, I'd ask the gentleman, he's been here longer than anybody else in this body. And as a tax conformity bill is passed near the beginning of every session, does the gentleman recall any previous session where a tax conformity bill has been coupled with tax policy?
Senator's the floor.
Let me just say this: Ed Willie must be turned over in his grave. The answer is no, but it's even worse than I imagined, because according to the gentleman from Shenandoah, the budget's in here too. I wasn't aware of that.
I thank the gentleman.
Thank the senator. Do any senators other than the patron wish to be heard on the committee substitute? Seeing none, Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of adopting the committee substitute and engrossing and enrolling it, but a couple of things I would like to say without extending the discussion. First of all, Mr. President, I would say that sometimes I have a proclivity to engage in strident and provocative language and have tried to exercise some modest degree of self-restraint today because I don't think that it contributes anything to the substantive discussion of the bill. But going back to the football analogy, I would have to say with some degree of amusement that if I had to characterize the proposed floor substitute, that in the game of football it would be characterized as a fumble. And I would say it for a couple of reasons. There has been a suggestion that those of us who are advocating the committee substitute really don't know what others would do if the floor substitute was adopted. I would have to dispute that suggestion, Mr. President, and I would dispute it for a couple of reasons. First of all, it has already been telegraphed that the governor wants to spend $2.1 billion in revenues coming both from the federal tax changes and from growth. We know that he wants to spend that, and it is reasonable to anticipate that those who support him would want to spend that. I was particularly taken by the discussion about the earned income tax credit, which I consider an unconscionable redistribution of taxpayers' wealth. What the governor had proposed was to write checks to those who are not paying taxes or paying a minimal amount in the amount of $250 million, to write checks to those individuals between the difference of the tax credit that they used and that which they did not. And I suggest to you, Mr. President, that those 2 points alone are a clarion call of what the intention of those who would support the floor amendment would say. I further take umbrage at the suggestion that anybody on this side is holding tax returns or tax refunds or tax rebates hostage. In fact, if you looked and spent the time to study the proposal in the Senate Finance Committee substitute, which I know many of you have, you will see that it provides tax relief for everyone in 4 different tax categories, ranging from those who make $50,000 or less, or those who make $100,000 or more. It is tax relief across the boards, and no one is holding anything hostage. Taxpayers are going to be able to file their tax returns. If they're entitled to a refund at that point, fine. But when later on in the fall, they're going to get another tax refund. And I suggest to you that there is nothing being held hostage, and that the approach of the Senate Finance Committee is far preferable to what has been shared. And as far for the absolute ridiculous argument that there has not been any participation by the entire Senate, I think I've heard a fairly spirited and well-defined and well-articulated debate today, which clearly has set up what the goalposts are. So, Mr. President, with due respect to the discussions that have been made from my colleagues on the other side, I would respectfully ask that the committee substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. Seeing at least 8 hands, we'll have a recorded vote. All those in favor of adopting the committee substitute will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The committee substitute is adopted. Because the committee substitute was adopted, the floor substitute regarding Senate Bill 1372 is now ruled out of order. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would now ask that Senate Bill 1372 be engrossed and advanced to its third reading, sir.
Question is, shall Senate Bill 1372 be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.